Hey everyone, welcome back to The Loft. Hope you're doing well. My name's Ben, and today I wanted to take a little bit of time just to go over my weekly portfolio update as normal. This video is going to be a normal length video because I actually had some activity in the portfolio, unlike last week. So if you haven't already, please remember to like and subscribe, as it really does help the channel out. And we are doing these updates every single week, which is why I call them my weekly updates. But anyway, let's jump in and we'll have a look and see at what's happened with my portfolio over the last week in regards to value. And we can see that I have had a value change from £2,875 back up to £2,880. This is a change in return of around 0.21%. From last week, we were sitting at 12.22% and we're down to 12.01% this week. So overall, that's a change in value from around £313 down to £308. So overall, I've lost about £5 over the last week. If we compare this to the VOO Vanguard ETF, we can see that I have actually managed to outperform the ETF itself. And I've managed to do this because if we look at the VOO, we can see that it has dropped by around 0.39%, which compared to my 0.21% shows that I have had less of a drop. I'm generally happy with that, but obviously that can change, and majority of the time I seem to be underperforming the actual ETF. So it's nice to have this particular week where I haven't had as much of a drop as the overall ETF. So jumping into the realms of purchasing, we can see that I did only make one order, which was for Store Capital last week. I picked up 0.4 of a share for a total of £9.58. And this brings my total position in Store Capital to 5.4 shares, which currently is sitting at a rough loss of 1.35%, though the majority of this loss is actually made up through FX rates and exchange rates. And the company itself is actually up by 2.1% on the initial investment that I've made. So if we ignore FX, I'm up. Obviously, we can't actually ignore FX. So overall, I am down around 1.35%. But hopefully, this may sort itself out if the dollar starts to gain some strength against the pound in the future. Ideally, this means that I will be pulling in around 95p to a pound every quarter from my dividends with Store Capital, which I think is a very nice segue to take us across to what dividends I got paid last week. Now, last week was a bit more of a busy week than I normally see, and the first dividend came in on the 17th, starting with British Tobacco, who sent across a payment of £1 and 8 pennies for holding 2 shares. Then AbbVie sent across 23p for the 0.3 of a share that I hold. And finishing off that day, we then had Apple, and they sent across 8 whole pennies for me holding 0.6 of a share. We can then move over to the 18th, and we can see that I had 4 payments on that day. Starting with AXA, they sent across a whole £3.62 for 4 shares that I hold, and they pay on a yearly basis, so I'm not going to see any more from them for another 12 months. Then we had Main Street Capital, who for me holding 5 shares sent across a total 61 pennies. And we had 2 more monthly payers to round off that day. The first one of the last 2, if that makes sense, was from Realty Income, who sent across 42p for the 3 shares that I hold. And the final one came from Pembina Pipeline with 21p for holding 2 shares. Then we have our final 3 payments, which came in on the 19th, with Hormel Foods sending 6 whole pennies for me holding 0.4 of a share. Then Omega Healthcare came in and they sent over £1.21 for the 3 shares that I hold. And rounding off the day and the week, we had the monthly payer Stag Industrials, who sent across 29p for the 4 shares that I hold. And this brings my total week's return of dividends to a value of £7.81, which nicely makes up for the fact that I received absolutely no dividends last week and has put me now over my £10 target for the month. So it'll be interesting to see how many more dividends come in over the next week and how much over my target of £10 that I can actually receive and get. So we'll keep an eye on that. Jumping in and looking at what stocks are the best performing and worst performing, as well as what's changed over the last week. We will be looking at the number 1 return in the form of percentage return. And this award goes to ITV, and they have returned around 108% on my original invested money. But if we look at what company has actually made me the most money, so if I was to sell now and could pull my profits out, that award would actually go to Games Workshop, who have returned a total value of £28.82. And they have replaced the long-standing winner of Main Street Capital, who recently had a bit of a price drop and FX didn't particularly help them out. So Games Workshop are now my #1 returning in funds. Going over and flipping that coin and looking at the worst performing stocks, we do have Dominion Energy in the form of percentage return and a loss there of 10.12%. So they are my biggest percentage loss. And the most loss that we have from essentially actual value, again, so how much money I would have lost if I sold all of my companies, that would actually be AT&T, who are now down around £5.04. And that's since their recent announcement that they will be ditching HBO Max and all of that and running it across into a new company. That's caused a bit of panic in the market and everyone seems to have sold out. I'm still evaluating that, seeing what I think and whether I'll be buying some more shares or just keeping my position as it is. But as always, we'll have to keep up with the news just to see what's going on there. Then lastly, let's have a look at the actual changes to all the stocks in my portfolio. Looking at a report, this is a new thing that I'm looking to do if you guys are interested in it. So do let me know in the comments below if this is interesting information. We can see that over the last week, the companies that have changed up and down in price. And looking at that, there's no surprise that the largest change in the downward position that I have seen in my portfolio is for AT&T, who are shown to be down around 6.92% over the last week. This is then followed by Comcast and Domino's Pizza. If we look at the best growers, so the ones that have appreciated in value the most over the last week, we have CVS and Hormel Foods, both of who have grown around 6% in share price return over the last week. As always, if there is anything else that you want included either as a one-off or as a regular review, something that you think would be useful to get insights and information from these videos, do let me know down in the comments below, and if possible, I will include them. And if you're kind of wanting to see what's happened up until this point, I would suggest checking out this playlist here, which basically documents my whole journey since I started this YouTube game. And until next time, remember to invest, save, and subscribe.